Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, China and Japan are stepping up their diplomatic campaigns against each other over Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to a controversial shrine honouring several war criminals. Aiming to shed its image as a poor host for foreign investors, Korea has unveiled a string of measures aimed at making the country one of the world's 10 largest destinations for foreign direct investment within the coming years. Plus, weather forecasters say the deep freeze in North America will subside soon, but mercury levels still remain about 10 degrees Celsius lower than the seasonal average in most US states. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. China and Japan's diplomatic row over Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine is now entering a new phase.
While Beijing is using all diplomatic channels to whip up global condemnation of Abe's visit, Tokyo is full-on defense mode, issuing explanations to world leaders where it can. Our Han Dan tells us more.
What started out as bickering between China and Japan over Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine is quickly morphing into a high-level diplomatic war of words. The shrine is highly controversial as it honors several Class A war criminals, as well as scores of those found guilty of lesser crimes. Chinese diplomats are using all possible channels to ensure the world knows full well that Abe's visit was unacceptable, while Japanese officials are busy justifying Abe's move whenever they have a chance to sit down with world leaders. China's ambassador to the U.S., Cui Tiankai, during a press hearing, criticized Abe, saying he should take full responsibility for the deterioration of China-Japan relations, while the ambassador to Canada, Zhang Junsai, also condemned the visit during an interview with a local media outlet. Chinese ambassador to Britain, Liu Xiaoming, went even further. In a letter published in Britain's Daily Telegraph, Liu compared Abe's visit to an evil wizard of the Harry Potter series, saying, "If militarism is like the haunting Voldemort of Japan, the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo is a kind of Horcrux, representing the darkest parts of that nation's soul." Japan is mounting a strong defense to China's diplomatic offensive. Japan's Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, during a trip to Europe earlier this week, told his Spanish counterpart that Abe visited the shrine to console the nation's war dead, as well as to make a pledge that Japan will never trigger a war again. Although Tokyo's #1 ally, the U.S., has already expressed its disappointment, Japanese diplomats are busy attempting to soothe ties with Washington. Against such a backdrop, Japan's director nominee of the newly established National Security Council, Shotaro Yachi's visit to Washington next week is gaining more attention than it might have done before. Experts say China and Japan's row has the potential to become even more emotionally charged, as the two nations' foreign policies are based on strong nationalism. And this, they say, would further escalate already heightened tensions in Northeast Asia. Han Dan, Arirang News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has sought to address the barrage of international criticism that has come his way over his recent visit to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine, saying he will continue fulfilling his responsibility and role as the nation's leader. In an interview with Japanese TV network BS Fuji on Wednesday, Abe said that by visiting the shrine, the hearts of many families of Japan's war dead have been healed. Responding to Washington's official statement expressing its disappointment over his visit to the shrine, where Class A war criminals are also honored, Abe said he could clear up what he called the misunderstanding once he explains his stance to U.S. officials. Wednesday marked the 22nd year since weekly demonstrations began in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul over the still unresolved issue of Japan's wartime sexual slavery. Surviving victims continue to call on Tokyo to acknowledge its war crimes and offer legal compensation. Our Kim Hyun-ji reports on the ongoing demand for justice.
On Wednesday, 2 surviving victims of sexual enslavement by the Japanese military during World War II stood across from the Japanese embassy in Seoul, as they've done so many times in the past, along with human rights activists and civic groups. For the last 22 years, those coerced into sexual slavery for the Japanese military have held a demonstration every Wednesday, which makes it the longest rally ever in the world. The group has demanded Japan fully admit to and reveal the truth about its war crimes, offer an official apology and legal reparations, punish those responsible for the crimes, accurately report on the crimes in history textbooks, and build memorials and museums in remembrance of the victims. However, the victims, also known as former comfort women, feel Japan has not accepted any of their demands. Japanese politicians continue to make comments that defame the victims and distort history. Among the 237 Koreans recognized by the government as victims of sexual slavery under the Japanese military, only 56 of them are alive today. Meanwhile, Korea and Japan are engaged in a battle in cyberspace over a comfort women memorial that was set up in a park near the Glendale Public Library in California last July. The Glendale Memorial is a replica of this one installed directly across the street from the Japanese embassy in Seoul, which depicts a girl dressed in traditional Korean clothing. The White House says a netizen submitted an online petition last week seeking protection for the Glendale statue. This petition was filed in protest of another petition submitted last month that asked authorities to remove the Comfort Women Memorial in Glendale. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea has called on the South to handle inter-Korean relations with a proper perspective of security and peace on the Korean peninsula. Pyongyang's Korean Central News Agency reported on Wednesday that escalating tensions on the peninsula are impeding the peaceful reunification of the two Koreas. It then accused the South and the U.S. of creating a dangerous situation on the peninsula through their continuous, quote, nuclear war exercises against the North. The report added that North Korea would firmly block and destroy any war schemes where they come from inside or outside the peninsula. The report comes as Pyongyang remains tight-lipped about Seoul's proposal this week to discuss resuming reunions for families separated since the Korean War. Looks like Dennis Rodman may have finally overstepped the mark. The world is asking whether it was appropriate for the former NBA player to have sung Happy Birthday to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. This was at an exhibition match Wednesday between the North Korean national team and former NBA stars, which Rodman organized in time for Kim's birthday. This is Rodman's 4th visit to North Korea, whose leader he refers to as a friend for life.
The family of Kenneth Bae, the Korean-American missionary detained in North Korea on treason charges, say they are outraged by comments Dennis Rodman made on CNN this week, in which he hurled accusations at the prisoner and defended the North Korean leader. In an interview with CNN, Terry Chung, Bae's sister, said that her family was appalled at Rodman's behavior and added that he could have done good by helping with the release of her brother, but instead blamed Bae for his captivity. Meanwhile, Bae's mother told Voice of America on Wednesday that her son called from Pyongyang on December 30th. Bae was visited by officials from the Swedish embassy prior to the call, which his mother understood the North specially granted him as a kind of New Year treat. Back here in South Korea, and the Bank of Korea has left its key interest rate unchanged at 2.5% for the 8th straight month in January. Announcing its decision on Thursday, the central bank said it expected the economy at home and abroad to stay on a path of moderate recovery. The bank did, however, take note of the rapid strengthening of the Korean won against the Japanese currency and lingering uncertainty stemming from the US Federal Reserve's decision to start scaling back its bond buying program. The weak yen, which lost a fifth of its value against the won last year, is a major concern among policymakers as it erodes the price competitiveness of Korean exporters against their Japanese rivals. And the central bank also says it expects the Korean economy to grow 3.8% this year and 4% next year. The Korean government is attempting to lure more foreign direct investment to boost the local economy and is promising a better climate for investment and quality of life improvements. Kim Min-ji reports.
The Korean government on Thursday unveiled a set of measures to draw more foreign direct investment to the nation in a bid to spur economic growth by boosting production and creating jobs. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy's blueprint includes a relaxation of regulations on foreign investment and incentives to encourage global companies to set up their headquarters in Korea. First, the government plans to ease and clarify foreign investment regulations. Many economists have pointed out that one of the biggest obstacles to foreign investment to Korea is the maze of confusing regulations on overseas investors. The government also plans to encourage global enterprises to establish regional headquarters and research and development centers in Korea. The blueprint also includes a series of incentives for foreign investors, including quality of life improvements. Finally, the government also plans to map out strategies to attract more foreign investment in the future. Although Korea has seen the amount of foreign direct investment jump in recent years, the country is still far behind other global players. In 2012, foreign direct investment in Korea came to $147 billion, far behind the US, which had $3.9 trillion, and Britain at $1.3 trillion. In addition, Korea's foreign direct investment in terms of GDP is the lowest in the OECD. FDI accounted for just 12.7% of GDP in 2012. That puts Korea second to last among the 34 OECD countries and far below top-ranking countries such as Luxembourg, Ireland, and Britain. But with the newly announced plan, Korea is now aiming to become one of the world's top 10 investment destinations in the coming years. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye's first overseas trip of the new year will take her to India and Switzerland. She embarks on a 9-day trip to the two nations next Wednesday. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju has all the details.
The creative economy will be the key theme of President Park's trip to India and Switzerland. The concept encourages collaboration between creative ideas and the science and technology sector to produce new growth engines for the economy. In India, President Park is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and the two are expected to discuss cooperation in the sectors of security, trade and investment, and most importantly, science and information communications technology, the key parts of a creative economy. Further cooperation in this field with India, a huge market with a population of 1.2 billion, is expected to give a boost to President Park's vision for a creative economy, which is one of the major goals of her 3-year economic reform plan unveiled earlier this week. In the Swiss capital of Bern, President Park will hold a bilateral summit with President of the Swiss Confederation, Didier Burkhalter, and the two are expected to seek ways to expand cooperation in various fields, especially science and technology and vocational training, sectors that are strengths for the European country. President Park's trip marks the first state visit by a Korean president to Switzerland. During her stay in that country, she will also attend the World Economic Forum in Davos and give a keynote speech on the creative economy and entrepreneurship. The presidential office of Geunhye says President Park plans to introduce her economic reform plan, which centers around the creative economy, and promote Korea's economic and investment environment to bring more foreign businesses to the country. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. NEWSLINE at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
The bitter cold weather in the U.S. has turned streets into ice rinks and kept residents shivering under the record-breaking temperatures. But it looks like some relief is in sight. Officials say temperatures are expected to get back to normal by Friday. Connie Lee has more.
Forecasters say the worst of the polar vortex that's descended on the United States is now over. According to AccuWeather, the bitter cold that affected around 240 million people in the U.S. is expected to ease up by the end of the week. But the mercury levels now are still below average in most U.S. states, about 10 degrees lower than normal.
You gotta dress warm, put your hat, sweater on it, double pants, good shoes.
The bitter cold is still a challenge for people in New York City, especially the thousands who commute by public transportation and those who work outdoors.
We're working a lot, every day 12 hours, so it's really cold being all day outside. It's freezing.
I'm staying with 2 support on heater and I'm surviving. But that was not enough for this cold.
On Wednesday, sheets of ice could be seen in several U.S. cities as the frigid temperatures caused water mains and pipes to burst. A water main break in Pennsylvania left vehicles stuck in thick ice, and another one in Georgia sent water shooting into the air. The blast of Arctic air that hit the U.S. early this week brought record-low temperatures to the Midwest and along the East Coast, grounding at least 10,000 flights, cutting power to tens of thousands of homes, and causing at least 9 deaths across the nation. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Canada has confirmed the first known case of avian flu in North America following the victim's death earlier this year. The Canadian Health Ministry said the person may have picked up the H5N1 virus after a trip to China in December and said they're working with the Chinese government on the case. Canadian health officials said the person was not initially diagnosed with the disease, leading to their death on January 3rd. The officials did not identify the gender, age, or occupation of the deceased. Officials say this is an isolated case and that the risk to the general Canadian population is extremely low. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 650 human cases of H5N1 infection have been confirmed worldwide in the decade up to 2013, resulting in 384 deaths. The improving job market in the United States is what convinced Federal Reserve officials to begin scaling back their bond buying program, according to the minutes of their December policy meeting, which were released on Wednesday. The minutes show that most Fed officials believe the central bank should completely wind down bond buys by the second half of this year. The Fed announced at the end of its December meeting that it would cut its purchases of mortgage bonds and U.S. Treasury bonds from $85 billion a month to $75 billion. Most analysts believe that if the U.S. economy continues to pick up, the Fed will carry on cutting its purchases by $10 billion after each policy meeting in 2014.
The total number of smokers in the world is edging ever closer to 1 billion. Data collected from 187 countries shows 967 million people smoked every day, compared with 721 million in 1980. Researchers say the rise is linked to population growth, as there are simply more people around to take up the habit. A separate joint study by the University of Washington and the University of Melbourne shows the smoking rate in Korea is higher than the world average, with 24% of the Korean population regularly lighting up, compared to under 19% of the global average. It also found that Korean smokers puff on more cigarettes a day than the world average. The Consumer Electronics Show 2014 is in full swing in Las Vegas. Every single company hopes their gadget is going to be the next big thing, and this year some of the world's biggest automakers are coming along for the ride as they embrace the latest smartphone and mobile computing technology. Ji Myung-gil reports.
By embracing smartphone and mobile computing technologies, automakers are beginning to blur the line between our digital and driving lives. BMW made a splash at the opening day of this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas by demonstrating a way to control its new i3 electric car using Samsung's Galaxy Gear smartwatch and Bluetooth wireless technology.
Using Samsung's Galaxy Gear, you can remotely control the car's temperature, recharge the car battery, and operate the door locks.
Mercedes-Benz, not to be outdone, is using the Pebble smartwatch to show off a new way to check up on vehicle conditions.
We see the total mileage, we see the tire pressure, so you have full information of your vehicle on your watch.
Audi teamed up with Google to bring Android to cars. An Android tablet was designed to provide in-car entertainment such as music and streaming videos. The owner can also search for apps in the Google Play Store. This year's CES is proving that more and more automakers are rushing to make sure there is no disconnect between the gadgets we use each and every day and the vehicles that get us where we're going. Jimyeong-gyun, Arirang News.
2030 marked a major step forward in space exploration for countries like China, India and Japan. With competition in the global aerospace industry heating up, Korea is planning to launch its own mission to the moon by 2020. Our Paul Lee reports on how Asia is taking a leading role in the next generation of space missions.
This past December, China's first lunar lander safely touched down on the moon's surface, along with its companion rover. This successful space mission makes China the third country to complete a soft landing on the moon after the United States and Russia. China plans to return to the moon to build a manned base there by 2030. India has also been advancing its space program. Its first mission to Mars successfully left Earth's orbit last month. The satellite is expected to reach the red planet by mid-September, and India's space agency plans to launch 58 additional space missions over the next 4 years. Not to be left behind, NASA says it's planning to build a permanent base on the moon by 2025 and also send astronauts to nearby asteroids.
In addition, NASA is planning a human mission to the vicinity of the moon to assist lunar space, probably early in the next decade. And this will be very exciting as well because not only will we be visiting the area near the moon, but we will be taking a piece of an asteroid and bringing it back there to show that we can use resources not just from the moon, but also from asteroids.
Meanwhile, Korea is pushing ahead with its own space exploration program, with an early lunar probe set to launch in 2017. The Korea Aerospace Research Institute says its ongoing collaboration with NASA will help train personnel and develop core technologies.
Even though we've done a lot of research in guidance control technology, our experience has been limited to low-orbit and geostationary satellites. Therefore, we are working with NASA to address these issues, since they have a great amount of experience in this field.
With the full support of the government, Korea's space agency has accelerated its plans to reach the moon by 2020 with an unmanned rover, in search of rare metals and other resources. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Okay, well, we had a really dramatic change in the weather overnight, and it certainly feels a lot more like the middle of winter now.
Certainly. Well, for a look at the forecast, let's now go over to our Ji-yeon at the Weather Center. Hello there, Ji-yeon.
Well, good afternoon, Mark and Yusun. Well, it's freezing today, and the first cold wave advisory of the year was issued this morning. Now, the KMA issues cold wave advisories when the temperature falls more than 10 degrees from the previous day or when it remains below 12 degrees Celsius for over 2 days. So that means the high today will be 10 degrees lower than yesterday. Though we're expecting winter sunshine throughout the country, but it won't give us any relief from the chilly condition. In fact, the cold wave advisory is still in effect in the upper parts of the peninsula, and it will feel colder than the actual numbers due to the wind chill. Now, the coldest morning of the year is on the horizon for tomorrow, so we'll wake up to morning morning low of -10, and the freezing temperature should ease up this weekend, but the mercury will continue to be below freezing throughout the week next week. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The high in Seoul will only make it up to -3, and Daegu and Gwangju will be at 2 and -1 respectively, while the high in Busan will climb to 4. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju won't be much warmer with a high hovering at 2 degrees Celsius, and the top temperature on Mount Kumgangsan will be at -7. Now that's all for me today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jion, for the weather there. We'll have to wrap up warm today. It's extremely cold. And that's it for this Thursday edition of Newsline at Noon.
Join us again tomorrow at noon.